Last week, we heard Steve McKinney's incredible story about how he turned his garage gym into a mission field, blending his passion for fitness with pastoral ministry. If you missed that conversation, I'd encourage you to go back and listen. It's a powerful example of finding evangelism opportunities in unexpected places and why we as pastors need to be involved in the community and not just in the church. Now, this podcast is about money, but my heart is to help pastors stay healthy in ministry. And here's the thing. Our physical health directly impacts our financial health. When we're constantly stressed and exhausted, we make poor money decisions. It's hard to budget wisely, teach stewardship effectively, or even stay in ministry long enough to build financial stability when we're running on empty. Today, Steve is back to share something every pastor needs to hear: his practical 3W system for staying physically and emotionally healthy in ministry. With pastor burnout at an all-time high and a shortage of pastors in the pipeline, we can't afford to ignore the connection between our physical health, our financial health, and our ministry effectiveness. Steve breaks down his 15-minute workout system, explains why walking after dinner is a game changer, and shows us how physical discipline actually helps us take every thought captive, literally. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the idea of adding fitness to your already packed schedule, this conversation will change your perspective. It definitely changed mine. Steve McKinney is a best-selling author, fitness coach, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt dedicated to helping people age strong and live healthier lives. As the owner of Fitness and More Incorporated, he has helped countless individuals transform their bodies through his unique 3W approach to fitness. And why is he on this podcast? Well, Steve is also a church pastor, integrating faith and mindset into his approach to wellness. His book, The Gospel of Fitness, breaks down the science of strength training and nutrition in a way that's practical, sustainable, and life-changing. We often see pastors burning out. We see physically, emotionally, spiritually, and I know we have right now across denominations in the U.S., we have a shortage of pastors in the pipeline. We don't have enough coming in to replace the ones that are retiring, dying, quitting. And some of that is because of that burnout. How does physical health specifically impact our ability to lead effectively and to maintain financial discipline too? Because the finances are a piece of staying in the ministry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to what I was saying earlier about this week. So this week, I'm dealing with probably 5 divorces that are going on, and I'm trying to walk people through that. And I don't do counseling. I have professional counselors that I send people to, and that works much better. But I still try to talk to people and stay in touch with them. Just men, I don't counsel women. And, I'm very careful in how I approach all of those things. But I'll just talk to the guys. But I had one that was really, really stressful. It was a young man, known him forever, and he's just going through a horrible, horrible situation. And then I had somebody get mad at me this week and post on social media about me. I had no idea what I had done, sent me real ugly messages. It was really crazy. I know that we have to be resilient, but that affects me. I think it affects everyone. Actually, I came home from work on Monday and I'm like, "Hey, Jen, do you know this particular person?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, they sent me really, really ugly messages." And she laughed and she goes, "So you're the pastor that they're posting about on Facebook?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And so it was really, really stressful. But for me, that's where exercise comes in. When I go to lift weights, the beauty of that for me and the way I design my workouts are 15-minute workouts. I talk about that in the book. But the beauty of the workout is I always just remind myself to stay in the moment. I'm working really hard. I do all my reps really controlled, but I'm staying in the moment. And that takes that looping thought process of those thoughts that go in your brain. It removes those. It really helps me. And then I'll train jujitsu. When people are trying to choke you, you're not thinking about people who are mad at you, you're thinking about surviving. So that's the beauty of that. Once again, I'm removing those thoughts from my brain. The other part of that is I'm walking. And what I'll do a lot of times is I have a grandson. And so he's 16 months old, but he loves to go for a walk. So I'll just walk through the neighborhood. And then I listen to a pastor on my phone. I'm getting the word in him at 16 months old, but I'm just listening to those things. And so that's how it helps me. That's how exercise helps me. It separates me from those continuous thoughts that go along that. And then I can come and reface those and deal with them in that way. And then I have John Eldridge's 1 minute pause. I don't know if you've ever heard that one, but I got about 1,000,000 minutes on that one because it's just this little detachment thing that says, Jesus, I give everyone and everything to you. And so when I'm going through tough times, I use those. But that's the things that I use for my mental health as I'm going through difficult times. But exercise, it also releases endorphins in your brain. And when you leave, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm alive again. I'm not in the dumps. I'm not dealing with that. And I'm not always super stressed. The ministry, you can be cruising right along, and then all of a sudden it's boom. I had 3 people outside of my door after last week's sermon just waiting for, to talk. And so, yeah, it's been that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, so that's how I approach it.
I remember starting to build a walking habit several years ago when I had been in a really rough season and I had just started seeing a great Christian counselor. I remember telling her, I'll walk 1,000 miles if it makes me feel better, because I would go
Yeah.
out there, I'd get the vitamin D, I'd get those endorphins, I would like to say like all my chemicals go in the right buckets.
Yeah.
And so for you, it sounds like physical activity becomes a way of taking every thought captive
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
practical sense. Like we know that we're supposed to do that scripturally, but then like practically, what does that look like in the moment? And this is one of the ways that that could look.
Yes, absolutely. And then with my personal training business, I still work a couple of days in there. And that's honestly, it's a workout. I train people, but it's also counseling sessions for a lot of people. I don't mind that a bit. It's just beautiful to be able to do that. And a lot of times I'll be in the middle of a session. I had a guy in and we were just talking about heaven. And his name's John. I go, John, well, why would you be able to go to heaven? He goes, well, Steve, I'm a good person. I go, John, permission to speak freely? And he goes, yeah. I go, you're a jerk. I've heard you and I've talked to you for a long period of time. So I just told him that, and we're good friends and I could say that. But I shared the gospel with him in that particular thing. The good people don't go to heaven. Believers go to heaven. So that's, kind of fun in that space too. And so it's been really, really good in that. The church though, and I think a lot of times for the pastor can be a very dangerous place. And sometimes, I have a great church, so I really have a great support group. But this week it was a bad place. And then I had a accountant talking about finances make a huge, huge financial error that costs me a whole bunch of money that I don't have. So I have to recover from that. But at the same time, there's a prayer that I pray. I think the guy's name I think it's the prayer of Ahab. Is that right? What it says is, don't give me so much that I forget you, Lord, or so little that I have to steal from you. Just give me what I need. And so when I go through that, I always think, I think God's just answering that prayer and keeping me in a place where I need to be, and so that I can still stay in the middle of ministry. And then one more thought with that, even though this week was very, very difficult, as I was meditating on the week in my bed, I thought, yeah, this is exactly, I'm right in the will of God. I'm right in the center of God's will right now. This is what I signed up for. So, yeah,
And we know as believers and especially as ministry leaders and pastors that it's a battle.
it's constant.
It's a battle. That's where we are preparing and we're going out into the battlefield, and that the enemy wants nothing more than, can he distract you? Can he twist somebody's comment and cause you to spin it around in your head? And so having that perspective and that reminder that there's not that if things are bad, that always means I'm doing the right thing, but also if I'm doing the right thing, sometimes it's going to be rough.
Exactly. That's so true. And another thing too with my walking, I'll walk with my wife sometimes, which is, so that is also great for the relationship too.
One of my favorite things to do almost every week, I go on a bike ride with my mom.
I love that. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I feel like a bike ride is just the right amount of some conversation, but then sometimes you're just riding,
Uh-huh.
and but you're still with somebody. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of in college when I would get together and study with friends that weren't in my classes. So we weren't working on the same stuff, but we were
But
just
you're whistling.
together.
I love that.
It's the introverts togetherness, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So perfect.
So, a lot of our pastors, time is a huge challenge. You talked about There's administrative stuff, there's the counseling, there's visitation, there's sermon prep. Some of us are working another job outside of things. And so a lot of times it can feel like we're too busy to prioritize our health. And so we're trying to, and our schedule goes all sorts of different ways, and it's hard to keep up with a routine too. What practical advice would you give to pastors who maybe want to be able to prioritize their health, but the idea of a big calendar suck up is just overwhelming?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the beauty of what I developed about that 3W approach to fitness. So I did a book tour this year, and I've done several churches. That was really fun, by the way. I really, really enjoyed them. But when I do them, I always tell people, I have this 3W approach to fitness. So just hold up 3 fingers. And if you look at that, it makes a W. And the 3 W's are weight training, walking, and watching your diet. Now, here's the thing, and this is the beauty of it. As I said earlier, I kept track of everything that everyone did when it comes to workouts. And I developed a system from that. I used to train people for like a half hour, 3 days a week, which I found was more, I don't like just to fill time. I like to make sure that we're efficient in everything we do. So my workouts are 15 minutes, which sounds crazy. And people think, oh, there's no way that a 15-minute workout would work. I can get a client into the gym in 2 exercises, literally 2 minutes. I can change their mind. And so it's just a matter of training properly, training safely. I call it training your muscles and saving your joints. And I was on a podcast from a doctor who's into exercise and prescribes exercise for people. And I was explaining to him that joint health is incredibly important. And so we're talking, and by the end of I talk about what's called time under load. So I make sure that people lift weights very, very slowly. They focus on the muscles, they stay in the moment. And I was telling him, about that. And at the end of the podcast, he said, I'm going to try your method because my joints hurt. And I just told him at 50 years old, if they hurt now, trust me, they're not going to get any better. And joint health is really important. So the point I'm making there is everything that I do is done for a reason. It's done very efficiently. It's done very slowly. It's very safe on your joints. And I just suggest 2 15-minute workouts per week. Now, when I start the workouts in the book, I go to 3 for the first 2 weeks, and then I go to 2. And the reason for that is they have to learn the routine. And so I always say, put that on your schedule. Maybe you're an early morning person. Put that on your schedule. Treat it as a doctor's appointment, because the more that you treat that as a doctor's appointment, the less doctor's appointments that you'll have. And so because it helps you, when you lift weights properly, there are a couple of things that happen. One of the things that happens is you release these things called myokines. And myokines are these little, we'll just call them little guys that go out and they start from your muscles, and they go out to other parts of your body, your organs. And what they do is they say, hey, listen, we're having a party over here. We want you to come join us. But they're signals that say to your body, this is good for us. It's good for all parts of our body. And so that's the one thing that is very, very helpful, because people lift weights, they always think about appearance. I'm like, yeah, everybody wants to look better, but it's not always about appearance. It's about attempt. And the attempt is to make sure you stay healthy. The second thing of the way that I lift weights, it causes your heart to get better. Okay. So a lot of times people, like you were mentioning, riding your bike, when you're riding your bike, your heart rate is higher. And people think that is the only thing when it comes to heart rate. It's part of it, but it's not the only thing. There's something called stroke volume. And so when we do a set of exercise, you stay under the load for 60 to 90 seconds. And that is, your muscles are under tension. And then when you release it, there's a bunch of blood that is released into your bloodstream that goes back to your heart. It's in the muscle. And it's almost too much. So it has to go into this waiting pattern. The heart can only pump out so much blood per beat. But what it does is, because of that, it goes, boom, it pumps that blood out. And then here's this next amount that's a lot, boom, it pumps that out. And so now we have our stroke volume that is, it makes it better. So it's very, very healthy for your heart. I'll give you an example. I've lifted weights, like I said, my whole life. My resting pulse rate is 38, which is extremely low. And it's because I've lifted weights. I'll go to the doctor. Now he's warned the nurse, my heart rate's going to be really low, because I went in one time and this lady ran out and got the doctor and thought I was dying. but because my heart's very efficient
Mm,
because of lifting weights. So the benefits are there.
mm.
And it doesn't take long to do it. You just you can do it. I have a home workout and a gym workout. You set that up and you do it at home or you do it in the gym and just make it efficient. It doesn't take a lot of time. The guy I was telling you about earlier, he worked out an hour a day, 5 days a week. And I'm like, dude, that's a part-time job. I don't
Mhm.
have time for that. Get the same results, if not better, in a very short period of time. Second
And we're
W
more
is
likely to actually do it.
yes, absolutely. I can't face an hour in the gym. That would just bore me. I'm in, I'm out, and I'm on my way. Now,
Mhm,
some people like to do it for social. That's fine,
mhm.
but you still should train properly. Then walking, I just suggest 30 minutes a day for people. If people want to walk more, they can. But most of the people that come to me, most of the people I deal with, want to reduce their body fat levels. So there was a study done years ago, and this guy, what he did was he measured calorie burn 3 hours after activity. And here were the three activities that he measured. He measured walking, he measured eating and walking, and he measured walking and eating. And what he concluded was the data, what it suggested was the eating and walking increased your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, by 25 to 30%. And so what I suggest to my clients is if you can, within 15 minutes after dinner, go out and take a 30-minute walk. It doesn't have to be fast, very moderate. And what you'll notice is you'll notice that you digest food, you feel better. It kills the hunger because if you're trying to reduce, you know, you have to create a calorie deficit to lose body fat. And so you don't want to be hungry all the time. And that helps with that hunger. It actually allows, the satiety to happen. And then the third W is watching your diet. And that's where I go back to eating real food. I used to be a big intermittent faster. I loved intermittent fasting because it just made my life so much easier. I just wake up, have a little coffee, go throughout the day, and then eat within maybe a 4 hour window from 3 to 7. And that was perfect for me. I could get more done. But after I had this silent GERD, that changed everything. I have to eat smaller meals throughout the day because if I overeat, it causes me to cough. So it's been a kind of a challenge there. But there's all kinds of ways you can go about it. And then eating real food is important. And then, a lot of studies have shown that having protein is important as you age. But I think that you have to be careful with that as well, because I think you can get out of whack with that. And so you just have to balance all those things out. So it's living in balance, doing what you can and not, not thinking, hey, I'm going to be big and muscular or whatever. No, I'm just being healthy. This is what I'm going to, now you can be muscular with this. It's just a matter of how you want to go about that. But
Right.
for me, I just want the average person to be able to be healthy. And so that's really important. So that's how I approach that.
So if we were, you know, talking to that one pastor listening right now that they just want to make one small change this week, they want to be
Mhm.
able to take action on something, where would you recommend they start?
Take a walk. Just take a nice walk. If you have a pastor you like to listen to, sermons you like to listen to, or not, if you just want to unplug yourself, you just take a walk. That's the number one thing I would do. I think the second thing I would do is get a copy of my book and start reading it because it's going to speak to you. Speaking of that, let me tell you real quickly how that came about. I've trained pastors for a long period of time, and I went to a pastors conference in Florida. This was 10 years ago or so. I had a friend, he was a talk show guy and a pastor as well. We met up out there. I didn't go out there to meet him, but I saw him there. And he goes, "Hey, man, would you train me?" So I took him through a workout. He's like, "That's the best workout of my life." He has a podcast. So he'd have me on his podcast every now and then. His name's Pete. One time he was asking me questions. So I said, "Pete, I have a book and it's 90% done. I answer these questions in the book." He goes, "You have a book? Really? What are you going to do with it?" I go, "Well, just going to give it out to my clients so that they, kind of know what's going on." He goes, "Well, that's really interesting." He says, "I have just started a publishing company."
Mhm.
And he said, "Would you send me your book?" And so by the grace of God, that's how that came about.
That's fine.
And yeah, so it was really cool. But it's helped a lot of people and I'm really happy about that.
Well,
So
I'm excited to go dust off the weights that have been sitting in my garage for
yeah,
forever.
and then there's a home workout with it,
Mhm.
and I think and I want to hear how you're doing too once you do it,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
like things that you can make kind of pocket sized and work into the schedule. You know, if I'm learning a language, I want the app that I can practice in the car that you can work easily into whatever you're doing because, it's back to, I'm sure you've read Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
It's back to if I can start something small, or sometimes re-engage small. I realized when my spin place closed that I had, because if you've never been to a spin class, you're not just riding the bike. You're doing all sorts of
Yes.
fun, different kinds of push-ups and sometimes weights, and you're not even thinking about it because you're moving and you're just having fun.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had built a lot of strength while I was doing those classes, and then like I don't have that fitting back into my routine anymore since I'm not there anymore. And so I'm like, okay, I need to work that back in.
Absolutely. It's so important. It's one of the things we lose as we age.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, I'm not the expert here, but I would imagine that you can prevent some of that other damage to your joints and things if you can be keeping up your strength and building your strength.
No question about it. Absolutely. And sometimes in certain cases, you can even reverse as long as the joint damage isn't bad. I've had several people that we've been able to help them. I had a guy that had shingles and it settled in his shoulder and he couldn't lift his shoulder up. And a year later, he's able to
Wow.
lift his shoulder. So we've helped him so much with that,
Mhm.
working smart.
I love it. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
tell us where we can find the book and more about what you're doing.
Yeah, it's on Amazon and it's called The Gospel of Fitness by Steve McKinney. If people need to get in contact with me, there's a form, just an intro workout form on my website. It's fitnessandmore.net. And then I'm on Instagram and I'm terrible at using it, but I'm Fitness and More STL on Instagram and I'm on Facebook as Steve McKinney. If anybody wants to get in contact with me and if I can help in any way, I'm more than happy to do that.
Great. And I'll make sure to include those in the show notes too. Thank
Awesome.
you so much for your
My
time
pleasure. Thank
this
you. What a
morning. This
joy.
was a fun conversation.
What a joy. Like
Yeah.
that little, yeah.
That's original. I've never heard that one
Yeah,
before.
I'm sure you haven't. So, yeah, but it was just fun. I really enjoyed talking to you. And so you're a blessing. I can tell you're a blessing to the body of Christ. And so that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing to really, you serve a lot of people, but to really helping people stay healthy in ministry. The world needs Jesus.
Oh,
And I was reading this morning of the how beautiful are the feet of those that bring good news. The
yes.
part right before that is right. How can they call on the name of the one they've never heard of? We pastors, we need you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't
And
quit.
we need you in the game. And that's the one thing too. As we get older, we have wisdom. We know what's going on. So we have to be in here for the younger. I'm mentoring younger people and that's fun. And so I want to be around to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
thank you for all you're doing to
thank
help our
you.
pastors stay encouraged and stay able to stay in the fight.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor.